Hello and welcome to an early morning episode of the Throwin MMA podcast. Almost completely misspoke there. And I'm getting this episode done early Saturday morning, which means nobody's going to hear it before the fights, but I felt I had to get it out. I was about to record a podcast episode last week. Kyle was going to be back. And then the fire alarm started going off. And I was alone in the apartment with my dog because my ankle was finally good enough that my girlfriend didn't need to be in the apartment with me 24/7 again. And so I had to bum scoot my way down the stairs with the little chihuahua while the fire alarm was going off. And then this week I've had to go back in and get 2 more stitches in my ankle. And my leg has started to atrophy. So, a lot of the time I've been in a little bit too much pain this week to hop on and do this. So the mornings seem to be okay. The evenings seem to be kind of when I get got here. So I'm going to try and get this one done first thing in the morning. Anyway, I'm sorry I didn't break down UFC 250. I want to break down that card because it was so goddamn good. I'll probably come with that one in the future. And also, just like this one, no one's going to watch it because that's an old breakdown and nobody watches old breakdowns. And then I didn't miss any other cards because there were no other fight cards. Full stop. No, we're not going to talk about it. So, Blaydes versus Volkov today. I was going to say this weekend. It's today. Sorry, guys. All right. I'm going to get a little bit higher energy here. Okay. Curtis Blaydes versus Alexander Volkov. Always excited to see Curtis Blaydes fight. I think as far as offensive wrestling goes, right on. I got coronavirus too. Okay. Curtis Blaydes, as far as wrestling goes, I think he probably has not only one of the most effective, but one of the most entertaining offensive wrestling games in the UFC. Definitely in the heavyweight division, but I think probably in the UFC. And going up against Alexander Volkov, I believe that's going to be essentially the only ticket he really needs. Volkov hasn't really proved to have much of a ground game. He's avoided taking it there, essentially, whenever he could. The only person he's really fought who would want it there is Fabricio Verdum. And I know Fabricio Verdum has trouble getting people there generally, unless they take him down. And then he had a win over Greg Hardy, which I definitely thought he was going to win better than he did. Curtis Blaydes, on the other hand, has been murking every single person that he faces, despite having a wrestling-heavy record. He popped Alistair Overeem's head open like a tomato can. He made Big Titty go home, which was a decision, and then he ground and pounded Shamil Abdurakhimov, and he lit up Junior Dos Santos. Let's not forget that. Outstruck Junior Dos Santos. So, obviously his striking game is starting to catch up with the rest of his wrestling. It has been for a while. I think it's all kind of coming together for Curtis Blaydes. Had a great showing against Francis Ngannou in their first fight. Fight was only stopped due to a doctor stoppage. And as far as I'm concerned, their second fight was an early stoppage. I think they definitely could have let that go longer. I don't think it really knocked Curtis out. I think refs have more of a tendency to jump on fighters and stop the fight when they fall face forward. I think they feel like that means the brain has had more damage done to it. I'm not really positive on the logistics of that, or if it just generally looks worse. The fact that you go forward and still don't catch yourself with your hands. I guess it maybe like the logical sense there is that if you're falling backwards, it makes sense that you haven't caught yourself, even if maybe you're a little bit more with it. But when you fall straight onto your hands and your face still hits the mat, that means you're done for. I think it's more likely that when you're fighting Ngannou, even with someone who's got a rock-solid chin, like Blaydes has shown time and time again to have, he's taken some nasty, nasty shots against Overeem, some nasty, nasty shots and knees against Hunt that he ducks straight into. I don't think you can really question that guy's chin. I think anyone's going to go out for a second when they get blasted by Ngannou. But he was quite clearly recovering to me. And I think that was an early stoppage. I would take, so much so that I would still bet on Curtis Blaydes over Francis Ngannou. Again, if they fought for a third time, I'd bet on Curtis again, because I think he's proved more. I know more about his game, and he's more of a complete package to me. And the last I saw of Ngannou, Blaydes' strengths match up, pretty directly with Ngannou's weaknesses that he showed in the Stipe Miocic fight, and hasn't really fought long enough in any of his fights to show that he's fixed since. So, I think especially if that's for a title fight, they're going to let it go a little bit longer. Anyway, back to the fight at hand. You got long, lanky Alexander Volkov, who hasn't really proved takedown defense against, I would say, someone with the acumen of Curtis Blaydes. Let's look back to his Bellator record, I guess. Well, he fought twice in Bellator. So, Czech Congo. He lost to Czech Congo. Yeah, so that's not looking good. He beat Blagoy Ivanov, though. Yeah, I still don't see it. I really don't see it, and I think Curtis Blaydes is going to have his way with him. It depends. I mean, Curtis Blaydes just came out. He had a fantastic striking performance against Junior Dos Santos. Grapplers in general, putting their striking together, and this even happened to Gilbert Burns. He's kind of gotten back to mixing it together, but when they just sort of put their striking game together, they'll sort of fall in love with the striking game. Obviously, as you need to get better at something, you need to sort of fall in love with it and commit yourself to it. And but that leads to them exclusively looking to perform in that area during the fight, to prove to others and to showcase their new talent. They're more proud of their new talent than the thing that they've been, honing and dominating in their entire life. And I guess that would be the one way I see Curtis Blaydes losing this fight, is if he becomes too committed to the striking. He falls in love, I guess, too much with the idea of his improved striking and the fact that he did just really take it to Junior Dos Santos on the feet. And then he tries to do it here from the get-go without truly mixing in the foundation of his success, which is the takedowns and his ground and pound and his ability to not only tire out his opposition on the ground, but to batter them and make them panicked and make mistakes that tire them out even further. And that once they finally... He really is like a heavyweight Khabib that has his own style. Like, he kind of does it exclusively of the fence. I mean, he uses the fence to take his opponent down, but once he's taken his opponent down, he actually sort of tries to separate them from the fence to avoid them using it to wall walk up. Makes it more difficult for them to get in a position where they can A, avoid damage. Well, essentially it's A and B together. It's A, avoid damage, B, while they get up. It takes more effort to get up, and it's much harder to get up without leaving yourself in a position to get hit. That is the problem. And for Curtis Blaydes, it's not a decision of, do I lock this guy down or do I land shots? It's how many shots can I land once he's able to get up. It's, I'll lock this guy down, but once he starts to break free, I'm just going to let loose until he gets away, because I know I can get him back down again, because he knows his wrestling's that good and he knows his takedowns are that proficient. It's a true pleasure to watch. Alexander Volkov, on the other hand, he's good to watch the other way until he gasses. He is, as much as he doesn't share the physique of many other heavyweights, he does share the the gas tank and the tendency to slow down and drastically lose his effectiveness over time. But I think the more he's able to keep his distance, the more he's able to, he's essentially going to have to fight off the jab. I was going to say his push kicks are fantastic. His knees to the body are great, but the knees to the body, not only are you getting quite close and, Blaydes is going to grab you, you're also leaving yourself on one leg, right? Same thing with the push kicks. You're pushing into his belly, but you're not only giving him a leg and an opportunity to grab your leg, you're leaving yourself, your base is vulnerable for him to just essentially charge you right off your balance. So I think Volkov's almost exclusively going to have to work off of his straight punches and then rely on the elbows and knees when things go south. This is going to be an incredibly long 25 minutes. I think the only way he wins this fight is by decision. I genuinely don't believe that he has the power to knock Curtis Blaydes out cold. We've seen many people land extremely clean shots, and even if Francis Ngannou got the TKO, he didn't completely knock Curtis Blaydes unconscious. So it's going to take a hell of a performance to pick Curtis Blaydes apart to the point of him losing by TKO. It would almost have to be by body shots, I would imagine. But I don't see any scenario where Volkov and Blaydes lock up in the clinch, or any other grappling scenario where Blaydes doesn't just, resoundingly take over and start to dominate. To me, this is a bounce back fight for Curtis Blaydes. This is something to take while he waits, because I think as much as Francis Ngannou is, stagnated and waiting in line for his title shot while Cormier and Stipe Miocic finish their trilogy, Curtis Blaydes is in the same scenario, especially after, excuse me, I got the hiccups. Especially after that Francis Ngannou fight, whether or not you're going to agree with me that, I think that was a bit of an early stoppage. Early stoppage or not, there's no arguing really that Curtis Blaydes is now, if there's two leagues, since we haven't seen Ngannou truly prove himself against that elite yet, there's that DC Stipe elite. You move a tier down, you got that Ngannou. We've got another one now. You move one more tier down until we sort that out. The same way that Ngannou needs to sort out where he is with Stipe, Blaydes needs to sort... Oh, sorry, bud. Sorry, I got my dog wrapped up on my lap here. We had a quick pause. Hopefully I made it seamless in the editing, but if you've heard a couple little sneezes and something... Sorry, buddy. I just booped his snoot, bonked him on the nose. Where was I? The same way Ngannou hasn't answered those questions that Stipe posed to him yet, because of the way the fights have been ending, and he needs to have that rematch, go to those places, and sort of prove that he's at that level, technically and proficiently as a fighter. Curtis Blaydes has the same thing to do after his 2 losses to Ngannou. It's just now that there's 3 tiers, and Ngannou gets his own tier, and then Blaydes gets his own tier, and then there's everyone else below that. The top of the heavyweight division to me is remarkably interesting at the moment. There's so many rivalries, which is an odd thing to say. It's weird that in a division where people will go back and forth and have wins and losses against each other, because for so long it's just been a collection of the same people fighting each other over and over again. Finally, we actually have some new blood causing some waves and making things competitive in a compelling way that doesn't just sort of seem like the geriatric round robin tournament that we've been treated to lately. Yeah, I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry I bonked you. Yeah. This will be a great fight, you guys. Like, I'm always excited for a nice Curtis Blaydes showdown. What else we got? Oh, it's going to take me forever to get back to this. This is why I usually write out all of the fights that I'm going to talk about. Josh Emmett versus Shane Burgos. This is probably fight of the night, right? It's either fight of the night or knockout of the night, depending on how long it is. But Josh Emmett sitting at number 8, Shane Burgos at number 11. I don't think this one is as tough to call as some are making it out to be. I think people really herald Shane Burgos as a great defensive boxer, and I agree to a certain extent, disagree to a lesser extent that I'll explain. I think his head movement is fantastic. I don't think anyone can dispute when they watch Shane Burgos fight that his footwork and the fundamentals of his head movement, especially from a boxing perspective, exclusively, is fantastic. It's fundamentally sound, it's creative, it's effective most of the time. The problem is he relies on it exclusively all of the time. Okay? That's the problem. Is head movement is something that you should always be doing. But it's not unless you're one of the incredibly talented. It is not the be-all, end-all of defense, and it needs to be incorporated with other things such as, proper defensive evasive footwork, keeping your freaking hands up, blocking, parrying, framing, and Shane Burgos does none of that. Maybe a little bit of framing, but blocking, and he tries to parry, but he gets caught in every fight. And Josh Emmett is the type of fighter that carries the type of power where you don't get a second chance against Josh Emmett. When Josh Emmett lands, it's lights out. And Shane Burgos has been fighting some guys, and even in, what was that fight where he snatched the armbar after he got almost knocked out? Kurt Holloway. Against Kurt Holloway, he got his clock absolutely cleaned. And the same thing against another legit boxer. This wasn't even something where, against Calvin Kattar, we're going to go all the way back to 2018. I know that he has developed a lot since then, but he also, he's shown development against, he won a split decision against Cub Swanson where he did get blasted many times, which is why it was a split decision. Cub Swanson, I think, has just shown that he doesn't quite carry that knockout pop anymore, especially if you look at his fights against Doo Ho Choi and Artem Lobov, and then you look at, Doo Ho Choi against Charles Jourdain. Maybe that's just a lasting legacy of the damage that he took, and he can't take the pop anymore, but when was the last time, we were going on a tangent, when was the last time Cub Swanson knocked anyone out? Oh, here, win punches over Dennis Seaver in 2013. So there you go. 7 years. Anywho, back to the discussion at hand. Those wins after Calvin Kattar is a pure boxer, and we saw that in his recent win against Jeremy Stevens, which was glorious. And so you had just another pure boxer, and you lost in the boxing. You got knocked out in the boxing because you're relying exclusively on your head movement. So even as far as boxing goes, even though that as far as boxing defense goes, his head movement is immaculate and impressive. He hasn't improved on any other defensive skill since then, and even a high-level boxer was able to figure it out. So it's not even like, oh, well, his defense is excellent for boxing, but he got figured out some other way. He got taken down and ground and pounded, or he got taken down and submitted, because his ground game looked fantastic against Makwan Amirkhani. And he snatched that armbar like it was nothing against Kurt Holloway after getting blasted, rocked, dropped, and essentially coming back, like snapping back to life like The Undertaker. He's just so entertaining and so talented in the striking department, so unorthodox and fun to watch. And he has that great base to build off of with the head movement. He just won't. I think he just likes looking slick and dodging the punches, thinking that he can bait his opponent into tiring out by missing over and over again. And he ends up getting caught. He's, like you said, he's right most of the time, but most of the time isn't all of the time, and it only takes some of the time to get blasted in the face and knocked out, especially when you're fighting Josh Emmett. So, I don't know, I'm expecting a huge defensive upgrade from Shane Burgos, and if not, I expect him to be getting knocked out cold by Josh Emmett, who's also been looking fantastic lately. Josh Emmett came in hot. He came in late notice against who'd he come in late notice against? Ricardo Lamas, that's right, when he moved up to featherweight, and he knocked him out. Had that loss right after to Jeremy Stevens, and I think he's proved since against Michael Johnson and Mirsad Bektic that he deserves to be, at least in the top 10. At least in the top 10. The way that he's won these fights are not unspectacular. The Michael Johnson fight was unspectacular until the spectacular finish that happened in the last 15 seconds. And Shane Burgos is going to be attacking all night. He's going to have his hands down all night, if that's what he's still doing. And he's going to be there to be hit all night. And Josh Emmett's going to wait for his moment. He's going to wait until Shane Burgos dips his head into an unfavorable position that it's going to take him too long to recover to his base from. And I think he's going to absolutely clean his clock. I see this as probably a late knockout for Josh Emmett. It's going to be violent, too. Next is Raquel Pennington versus Marion Renault. And then after that is Lyman Good versus Bilal Muhammad. Which I think will be probably another absolute banger. If Josh Emmett versus Shane Burgos doesn't deliver, this is probably my next pick. Oh my god, I can't even say that. Look at these fights. This is fantastic. How are you going to pick fight of the night in this lineup of cards? Oh, I'm killing myself now that I was doing physio and screaming in pain most of the week instead of recording this podcast. Oh, these are good fights. Damn. Okay, Lyman Good versus Bilal Muhammad. Don't have a lot to say about that. That's just going to be a banger. Roosevelt Roberts versus Jim Miller. Oh my god, Roosevelt Roberts, to me, didn't look good enough against Brock Weaver to be facing Jim Miller right now. Honestly, I think Jim Miller's probably going to take this, and this is going to be there's levels to this shit performance, unless Jim Miller, now that he's free of Lyme disease, also caught coronavirus, because it could just pass him. He's 31-14. This is he's been fighting for so long. You've seen the decline happening in the last couple fights, but this could end up being a dogfight in the twilight of his career. But if he gets dominated by Roosevelt Roberts, it's time to call it quits for Jim Miller. I'm gonna definitely pick Jim Miller in this fight, though. Roosevelt Roberts looks so impressive, though. This is a big step up from Brock Weaver. Damn. Oh man, that's exciting. That's so exciting, because Roosevelt Roberts has looked fantastic, and I think he honestly kind of looked off in that Brock Weaver fight. But so it's really hard to judge that performance against Jim Miller. But and it's also been visible how much of a progress he's been making between each fight. But then I just didn't see that progress in his last fight. So if it was there and he just had a bad night, hopefully we're gonna see double the progress against Miller, but not double, because Jesus, when did Roosevelt Roberts fight? 2-3 weeks ago? Man, okay. Clay Guida versus Bobby Green. Guida always brings it. Is an animal. Bobby Green, it kind of has that Shane Burgos disease, where he's quite offensive. He loves that. It's just, instead of head movement, it's the shoulder roll. And he just loves to do that shoulder roll. And he's really good at it most of the time. And then sometimes he just gets his clock absolutely cleaned. When was Bobby Green's last fight? This is kind of a comeback for him, isn't it? Yeah, I guess he hasn't fought since 2019, but that's not super huge. It's good to see him again. He's always entertaining. Hopefully he spits the water when he gets in the cage again, because I love that. Okay. Tisha Torres versus Brianna Van Buren. Brianna Van Buren honestly looks pretty promising from her last fight. But again, Tisha Torres is a known name in the division. She's a staple of the division. If you can beat her, we know you're elite. So this is obviously going to be a huge ask for Van Buren. That's all I have to say about that. Okay, yeah, see, look, like, I would say that Lauren Murphy versus Roxanne Modafferi and Courtney Casey versus Jillian Robertson are going to be more interesting fights to watch. Like, the dynamics of the styles are going to be more interesting to watch than the higher up on the card, Tisha Torres versus Van Buren and Renault versus Pennington. So yeah, keep an eye on those two women. Courtney Casey versus Jillian Robertson. That's gonna be a great fight. Those are two great fighters. Courtney Casey's looked great at flyweight, even if she did probably just cheat in the weigh-in, and you can find videos of that online if you look it up. And Jillian Robertson is obviously my Canadian girl, my submission queen, and I'm never gonna not bet on her. And never forget that the Macy Barber stoppage was early. I'll scream that till the end of until my life's over. Marc-Andre Barriault versus Oscar Piechota. Hopefully that's a good scrap. Marc-Andre hasn't had as good of a run in the UFC as we would have hoped, as we would have expected, given his performances on the regional circuit. Hopefully those were octagon jitters, but it's going to be very difficult to get them out against Piechota. Piechota had a rough start, I'm pretty sure. Oh, ooh. He had a good start. He beat Jonathan Wilson and Tim Williams, and I don't remember those guys. And then he lost to Gerald Mearshart, Rodolfo Vieira. I mean, yeah. And then Punahele Soriano. He walked right into a left hook. Well, you know what? This is probably a loser gets cut sort of thing, isn't it? Because... oh no, it totally is, isn't it? Oh no. Yeah, because Marc-Andre hasn't won a fight yet. He's lost every single fight by decision. Oh god. Yeah, this is loser gets cut. If it's boring, they both might get cut, honestly. Oh my god. Well, come on, Marc-Andre. We're pulling for you. Oh, this is huge. Frank Camacho versus Justin James. That sucks because it was supposed to... well, James is... I think I recognize him. He's going to put up a good fight, but it was supposed to be against Matt Frivola. Frank Camacho versus Matt Frivola, which would have been a banger. That would have been easily probably fight of the night because those boys come to bang. All right, but one of Matt Frivola's cornermen tested positive for coronavirus, so they had to pull him from the card as a precaution. And then we got Austin Hubbard versus Max Rohskopf. I have no idea how to say that. Rohskopf. No idea. And yes, his original opponent, Hubbard's original opponent, Joe Selecki, had withdrawn. So this is going to be a great card in a couple hours. And thanks for not listening.